And what we're going to do in this first song is really just kind of focus on the goodness of God as we dive into that message tonight. So, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to those guys, and we will get started. All right. Well, I really appreciate those guys in making themselves available. I miss getting to worship with you guys in person, but I'm so thankful that we do have the opportunity to be able to worship, even if it's just in our own homes. Just know that we're worshiping together in spirit when we do this, and so I'm so thankful that we get to do that. As you might have noticed, there is a background change. And the reason for the background change is because I have moved out of my basement. I'm no longer working from home. I'm working back at the church, and so I am here in my office right now at the church. And so I'm excited about that because it kind of means things are slowly starting to open back up and get back to normal. It's a little bit of getting back to my normal routine through all of this. And so maybe you guys are experiencing that a little bit as things are starting to open up a little bit. There's starting to be some hope that maybe this all might be kind of coming to an end. Now that end still might be a little ways away, but things are coming. It doesn't mean there's still not some risk out there, but things are starting to look a little bit promising for us, right? And if I have to be honest about it, the thing that's probably been the most frustrating for me personally about all of this is just the waiting and the unknown, right? That I don't know when are we going to get back to normal, and one day it's going to be out there, and I'm hoping it's out there. But when is that day going to be here? And all we can do in the meantime is just wait. That's the only thing we have available to be able to do, and it's so frustrating to be in that position, right? And if we think about it, I think the reason why it's so frustrating is because we just really don't like, none of us like waiting. I personally hate waiting. I'm sure you guys probably hate waiting, right? That's why they invented the microwave, so that we could have mac and cheese in like 2 minutes. And you just pop it in there, you're good to go. They've even made microwavable brownies and cakes and stuff like that. It's incredible, right? We love fast foods. They've even made apps where you can even speed it up so your fast food is even faster. Last summer when we went to summer camp, we stopped at McDonald's for lunch on the road there, and we had this big old long line because everybody was all trying to order at McDonald's at the same time. And somebody noticed that the mobile app order line, the mobile pickup, was completely open, and all of a sudden the mobile apps started flying through, and the mobile apps became the fastest. And so now our fast food's even faster. There's a reason it's not called Eventualgram. It's called Instagram, right? Because we like things to be fast. Right now, when we think about waiting, I would kind of put waiting in two different kind of categories. I would say there's maybe two different types of waitings, right? There's the first type of waiting that we do when we think about like waiting when it comes for Christmas, or you're waiting for after you've ordered some food and you're waiting for that food to come out, right? We know it's coming. We just have to be patient in the meantime, and so we know what's on the other end, but we have to wait, right? And that can frustrate us, right? But then there's the other type of waiting where we're having to wait and we don't actually know what's going to be on the other end, right? We don't know that there's going to be, a Big Mac with a shake on the other end. But I kind of think about the back in the day, back before I met or even knew Kayla, that kind of that idea when you were asking out a girl or trying to get to know a girl, and you would, back in my day, the way you would kind of go through dating is you would start by becoming Facebook friends. And so you would send that Facebook request, and then you'd have to wait and be like, is she going to accept my Facebook request? Okay, now that she's accepted my Facebook request, what does that mean? Does that mean anything? Does that just mean she's my friend? So then you kind of talk about it. Maybe you guys interact in person, and then we used to have this thing called Facebook Messenger. And so it would pop up and it would tell you who's online, and you would see that person that you like's online. And so you might send them a little, hey, right? And, then you're just waiting. You're waiting to see what's going to happen, right? And you put yourself out there in those moments, but you don't know what's going to happen in return, right? You're waiting to know, are you going to get rejected, or are they going to be like, hey, back? Right, and so it's the different type of waiting, right? And so I would say when it comes to something like prayer is more like the latter, where it's a vulnerable moment. It's those moments where we put ourselves out there, and we're waiting for God to respond. And so prayer is a very personal thing. And so tonight, when we're talking about prayer, I would make a guess that no matter where you are in faith, maybe if you're not even a person who really believes in God, you're not sure about God, you've probably prayed in some form or some point in your life. And because you've prayed, you've also probably waited for that prayer. And so maybe you found yourself praying some super serious prayer, like you were praying for somebody you knew that was sick, and you were praying for them to get better. Or maybe you're praying that somebody you knew was in trouble, and you just prayed that they would get better for them, and all you did was wait. Or maybe you just prayed that for normal everything things like you pray for your test or not to mess up in your basketball game. Either way, if you didn't get an immediate response, the whole waiting thing brings up some questions. And because it's so personal for us, I think it forces us to reflect on this, and we start to ask and wonder ourselves, is this an okay thing for pray for? Am I God getting a response because I asked for something I shouldn't have? If I'm talking to God about a topic that I shouldn't be talking to God about, is God saying no? Is he saying yes? Is God even listening in this point? Am I doing this right? Did I not, am I not saying the prayer in the right format? Is that why this isn't working? And we begin to question ourselves, and I think prayer becomes frustrating for so many people because of that. And then we kind of ask this question eventually, does prayer even work at all? And sometimes we get so frustrated we just don't pray. We stop praying. And so if you've ever wondered that, I want you guys to know something, that God is not mad at you. Your Heavenly Father understands you, and he isn't going to strike you down with a bolt of lightning if you ask some, perfectly normal and reasonable questions about prayer. If you bring those things to him, he wants to hear from you. Besides, you and I aren't the first to wrestle with this idea of prayer or whether or not God is actually listening. In fact, this particular story that we're going to look at tonight starts with this question in Luke chapter 1, where it says that one day Jesus was praying in a certain place. And when he finished, one of his disciples said to him, right, Lord, teach us to pray. Right, so you have Jesus, the Son of God, who is praying, right? So you can imagine his prayers are super powerful, right? When we look back on them, we've seen some of the things that his disciples have witnessed from him. That we've seen that he was praying when the Holy Spirit descended on him like a dove. That he began his ministry with a 40-day fast in the wilderness. That he prayed all night before he chose the 12 disciples. That he was praying alone just before he asked Peter, who do you say I am? And he was praying before he was transfigured when he took Peter and James and John up on the mountain to pray. Why? And we think about this, that Jesus is praying. He had a powerful prayer. And if anybody would know how to pray, it was the people that were around him, his disciples. But it says those were the guys that came to him. Right, which is encouraging to us, that it's the guys that are the closest to Jesus, the ones that should have had it all figured out. They're the ones with the question, Lord, teach us how to pray. And why are they asking this? Because they've seen Jesus' prayer, and they know Jesus' prayers are effective, and they're looking at themselves and saying, man, our prayer life is not like Jesus. How do we become like that? How do we do that? And that's probably where most of us are at tonight. How do we have an effective prayer life? And so when we don't get the prayers that when we don't get the responses that we expect from God, it makes us question, are we good enough, or is God good enough? So Jesus, hearing this question, goes into this story. He said to them, suppose you have a friend. You go to him at midnight and say, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine on a journey has come to me, and I have no food to offer him. And suppose the one inside answers, don't bother me. The door is already locked and my children and I are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything. I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of friendship, yet because of your shameless audacity, he will surely get up and give you as much as you need. Right, now that's an incredible verse. It's an incredible story that he's going to use. But it's an interesting one that he's going to use to talk about prayer, right? And you might be thinking about this. Well, who does that? Who goes and knocks on a door all night long? Right now, if this happened in our time, if somebody came and knocked on my door in the middle of the night and was like, hey, bro, can I get some bread? I would be like, why didn't you just go to Walmart? Walmart has bread and they're open 24/7. Why would you wake me up? Kayla's in bed, not the kids are in bed, but my wife is in bed, and so I'm going to go back to bed as well, and so go to Walmart is what I would tell somebody if they came to my house in the middle of the night. Right now, but in his day, this is where they're at, right? There's no Walmart around, and so this guy comes and he's knocking on the door in the middle of the night, and here's where this guy is at. It kind of sets a tone for just how desperate this neighbor who's looking for bread is, that he's willing to bug the sleeping family that's next door to him in the middle of the night, right? I mean, I can't even handle people texting me in the middle of the night. Imagine how bad I'd react if somebody just knocked on the door in the middle of the night, Right now, if I was the neighbor, I would have given up after one knock. Right? If he comes and I'm out of bread and I needed this situation, I'm trying to knock. I'm going to usually knock on my neighbor's door, and if they don't answer within a few minutes, I'm probably going to be like, they're probably sleeping. I'm going to let them sleep, and I'm going to go. This guy, on the other hand, just keeps knocking. He just keeps knocking, right? And nobody's there, and he's just not going to go away. He's just going to keep knocking until somebody opens that door and he gets the bread that he so desperately needs. Right? And if you've ever prayed about a desperate situation, you might be able to relate to the feeling this man's at, that he is so desperate that he's going to continue to knock because this is what he needs. He's got to do this. He's got to have that bread. If you've ever prayed your heart out to God to help you do well in a test that could make or break you, you've sent in a college application or tried out for a team and you've prayed like crazy for things to go in your favor. Or you've asked God to help your family drama get better, to help you make it out of a bad social situation, get you out of trouble, or give you strength to deal with everything that's loaded on your schedule. If you've ever prayed those heartfelt prayers to God, you resonate with this guy and the desperation he had going to his neighbor's door and saying, I need some bread. And after enough waiting and not hearing, we start to wonder, is it worth it for me to keep asking God about this? But that's what's so beautiful about the ending of Jesus' story, is that eventually the friend opened the door and gave some bread to his neighbor. He also gave us an incredible idea that can change the game when it comes to how we approach prayer, right? Which is that when it comes to prayer, don't be quiet, just don't quit just because it's quiet, right? When it comes to our prayer life, just because it's quiet doesn't mean we have to give up, we have to quit. Right? Because think about it, the neighbor who's looking for this bread, he probably felt discouraged, right? That he says, I need this and I can't get anything, and he's not answered the door, and I already let my friend down because he showed up in the middle of the night and I didn't have food for him, and so I already feel pretty down about this, and he feels discouraged, and yet he didn't quit. And this neighbor may have gotten tired. Right? Imagine trying to knock on a door and wake people up and just to continue to knock, 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 knock. And he didn't quit. He may have been tired, but he didn't quit. And the neighbor may have bruised his knuckles from knocking, but he didn't quit. And the neighbor probably woke up all the rest of the neighborhood yelling at his neighbor, hey, give me some bread, knocking, come to the door. He probably woke up everybody in the neighborhood, but he didn't let that embarrassment keep him from quitting. And even if you and I don't hear anything when we pray, we can keep praying. Because God is still good. He still hears us. And he's not bothered by our continuous knocking at the door. I mean, think about this. The neighbor, a normal human, opened the door. And if that's how he reacted, how much better would a good and perfect God with a perfect love react to you when you pray? Right now, we can all look at the story and we probably would agree that when we think about this story applying to prayer, it almost doesn't make prayer out to be a good thing. That this neighbor basically wins by annoyance, right? And so is that what we're supposed to do? And it makes us question this. Are we just annoying to God? Or is that what we're supposed to do to get our way with God, is just to annoy him, right? And it doesn't really make prayer look as so good. And I think it's meant to make us ask this question, is God like the person who is asleep at night? Is God asleep, and are we inconveniencing him? Is he like that? Is he bothered by our knock? And it's meant to ask us, what do we think about God? What do we think God is like? Because how we answer that question, what we think God is like, is going to determine if we think God is worth waiting for or not. Right? If we think God is like most people in the world who would be annoyed by us, waking them up, knocking on the door in the middle of the night, then we'd be tempted to probably call it quits. But if we believe that God is good, that he's kind, that he's compassionate, that he's full of mercy and love, like Jesus tells us he is, then we'll keep on asking because God is worth asking, and we know that he will eventually open that door. And we may not get what we want, but when we trust the character of God we are asking, our faith won't crumble when we don't get what we want. Right? And Jesus is going to make this very clear for us, right? Skips down a few verses. And he has this. He says, he tells another story. He says, which of you fathers, if your son asks you for a fish, will give him a snake instead? Or if he asks for an egg, we'll give him a scorpion. If then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him? Right, now, the first story where the neighbor is going and he's knocking, trying to find some food to feed his friend that just showed up, it shows us how we should come to prayer. Right? That this person had a friend showed up, and that friend shows up, and he wasn't expected. Right? Completely unexpected. If he would have been expecting him, he would have had some food ready, but he doesn't. And then the friend shows up in the middle of the night, and it's inconvenient because it wakes him up, and now he's got to go look for food in the middle of the night, and it's inconvenient. And it was insufficient that he was insufficient because he didn't have anything. He says, I have nothing, and he's pleading to his neighbor, please give me some bread. And in the same way, we are to approach prayer. When the unexpected things in our life pop up, when the inconvenient things in our life pop up and we don't know how to deal with those, when we feel insufficient, that's when we tend to go to God in prayer. And what Jesus is telling us in this story is to keep going to God in prayer. Keep going to God. Keep going. Keep going. Don't give up on going to God in prayer. And we may think, well, this is great news. This means that I can ask God for whatever I want as long as I don't quit. He'll eventually give me what I want. Well, that would be great, but I imagine some of you have probably prayed really big prayers with a lot of persistence and you didn't get what you asked for. Hey, maybe your parents didn't stay married. Maybe your aunt's cancer came back, or you didn't make the team. Your friend's mom took the job in another state and now they're moving away and your friend's going to be gone. Maybe you got busted, the news came out, and now you're in trouble. If you pray for long enough, you're going to hit moments when, even though you prayed over and over, God didn't come through in a way you asked, you wanted, or you even expected. When this happens, this can really mess with our faith. And it's easy to think, I prayed, I asked, I waited, I asked again, and then things turned out the opposite of what I asked. And this can really challenge our confidence and our belief in God. But what this parable is less about is the what we get and more about the who we are talking to. It's more about our willingness to keep asking, even if we don't go, even if we don't know how we get to them. And so God is concerned with the things that concern us. He sees our lives and he loves us more than we could ever imagine. His character is good, his heart is good. When we trust that, it's easier for us to keep asking. It's easier for us to wait. And it's not a guarantee that we'll get what we ask for, but it's a guarantee that we can count on the God whom we're asking. And God promises that he will help us experience peace. God promises to comfort us even in our darkest hour. God promises that he will never leave us or forsake us. God promises that nothing can separate us from his love. And sometimes those promises can be hard to believe when the answer doesn't look like what we hoped for and the silence seems to be unending. It's these moments that we don't keep asking. He's saying, keep asking, keep asking. And so this first parable is an encouragement to keep asking and to focus on the God who is good. And it's saying that we should come we should come in this spirit of dependence where we need God, and we should keep coming to God with our needs. But then the second story that he told, the story about the good father who gives good gifts, that's how God comes to prayer, as a good father that doesn't give snakes when he's asked for a fish. When the Father in heaven, when our Father in heaven, it says that we should think of him like a father that cares for us, that loves us. And it says that when he's slow to give us an answer, when he wills that we prevail for a season, that we keep pushing for a season, it's because he's giving us a fish and not a snake. He's giving us what is good for us. There's something in this struggling, in this pushing, in this waiting, this asking and this seeking and this knocking that we do that we need, and it's going to be good for us, and he knows what's best. Thomas Watson was a Puritan pastor, 350 years ago, and he wrote this book, The Body of Divinity. And in that book, he answers this question: why does God delay an answer to prayer? Why would God wait? And so, in other words, he's asking, why would God ever keep us in this state where we're constantly having to ask and seek and knock when he could just respond and he could just answer the door and do so sooner? Well, he gives 4 answers that I want to share with you guys tonight to just kind of think on or reflect about. But our true greatest need is him. And he doesn't give snakes, which means that the waiting isn't a snake. And so if he's asking us to stay and to wait, it must be because it's for our good. And the second reason that he gives, he says that God might delay, is that he may do so to humble us. We may too easily assume we merit some sort of, quick response from God. And we may think, well, I deserve a quick response from God. And that he's at our beck and call like a butler. And we don't treat him as a sovereign Lord or a loving Father. And so we wait so that we might understand that about God. And the third reason, he says, is because he sees we are not yet fit for the mercy in which we are seeking. And so he's saying, you're not fit for what you're asking for. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a problem with us, but it could be in what we're asking for, that all the pieces haven't come together. He's saying that he's saying that in us, or maybe our church or the world around us, is not ready for what we're asking for, that there's a million pieces in the puzzle, and sometimes certain pieces go in before others. And so he might give us something different. He might give us a piece, in increments. And I'll say again, he doesn't give snakes even when we ask for them. We think about what makes God good. God is not good because he gives exactly what we ask for. In the parable, when he says that they give a fish, that they don't give snakes for the fish, it doesn't mean that God isn't going to promise you a fish and he's good because he's not going to give you a snake instead. That's not what makes God good. It's the fact that he doesn't give snakes no matter what. Right? Even when we ask for snakes, what makes God good is that he gives us what we need. He gives us good gifts even when we don't ask for good gifts. And finally, a reason that God might delay is that what we're praying for, when we finally receive it, we will praise it more. We will enjoy it more, and it'll be sweeter when it finally does come. And I think about this, that there was a baseball meme that I saw. I think it was a tweet from Matt Carpenter, who plays for the St. Louis Cardinals. And if you're not aware, the baseball season, the Major League Baseball season, has been completely suspended. They're not really sure when they're going to be able to get it going, but they should be playing right now. And Matt Carpenter, who's this professional baseball player, tweeted out this, and he said, I miss the rain delays. I miss getting jammed in cold weather. I miss batting gloves. I miss long replay reviews that don't get overturned even though he was safe. I miss the umpires. I miss the long flights at 3 a.m. after a tough loss. I miss the shift. I do. I miss it. I miss it all. And it's interesting that his tweet primarily focused on the things that would normally frustrate him about baseball, the rain delays, the umpires who missed the call. Those are the things that would typically would make him say, I'm frustrated by baseball. But in this situation, he's saying, I miss these things. I miss even the frustrating things about this, because I miss baseball. And so when baseball comes back, he's going to enjoy it so much better. And I think about this for us, that I long for the day when we can meet in person. I pray for it. And when it comes, I know that we're going to enjoy it in a deeper way than we ever could have, because of the waiting that we've been done. And I understand what it's like to be without you guys, and I miss you guys. And so when you guys are back with us, man, I want to enjoy you so much better. And so I think about that God might be delaying in this time, so when we come back together, it'll be even sweeter. And so I'm going to close with this, that sometimes prayer feels like a slow, wasted time. And honestly, sometimes it feels like God isn't even there or listening, but he is. He is listening. He does hear our prayers. He hears our knocking. Even if he's delayed getting to the door, he knows we're there. He knows we're knocking. And Jesus tells this story because he already knew it would feel that way. He knows that we feel this way about prayer. And he knew that we'd be easily distracted and we'd feel tempted to give up. And he knew that we'd come to the conclusion that maybe God wasn't good or that he wasn't present. And the story teaches us that when it comes to prayer, he's saying, don't quit because it's quiet. Don't give up praying to a listening God who loves you so much. And so we're gonna sing one more song, and then we're gonna roll the questions. But the last song that we're gonna sing is about mover of mountains, and we're gonna think about how awesome and how powerful and how big our God is. That when He goes to work, it is amazing. He is a mover of mountains, and I want you to think about that. That what are we asking God for? I want you to think about that question for you tonight. What are you specifically asking God for? What are you hoping for an answer about? Not some general thing like, well, I hope for world peace. What's something specific that's going on in your life that you're praying about? Something big, something small, something new, something you've been asking about for a while now. And the first thing that I want you to do is to write it down. This is just good practice, not just for tonight, but in all of our prayers. Right? I hope you guys have a journal that you're writing down, because we have a tendency to forget. We'll pray about something and then we'll move on. But a prayer journal will help us keep coming back and persistently coming to God until we seek an answer, until He gives us an answer, whether that be yes, no, or maybe, or partial. That we'll keep praying and we'll change our prayer life to fit that as we go down. But write it down. And then the next thing I want you to do is, after we wrap up tonight, is just to slow down, which is maybe to put some things down like, Netflix or Xbox or something like that, and just slow down. And then the next thing to do is just set a reminder to slow down and then to pray. Put an alert on your phone, set an alarm, maybe put a note somewhere that you'll see it, and decide to put that time apart and pray and keep praying and keep asking until you get an answer. And maybe you'll get what you asked for, maybe not. Either way, you're asking a God who is good, who can be trusted no matter what. The God who is a mover of mountains. And so don't quit asking. Let me pray for you guys, and then we'll worship, roll those questions, and we'll get out of here. Miss you guys so much. Remember, next week is our last Catalyst Live. After that, hopefully we'll be meeting in person pretty quick. Let me pray for you guys. Love you all. Thanks for coming and tuning in. So thankful to be with you. Lord, I just thank you so much for just how incredible your love is for us, Lord. And when we struggle and we pray to you, Lord, and we bring you things that concern us, Lord. There's this waiting period, and sometimes we don't feel like you're answering, God, and it makes us feel like you're not concerned, Lord. And I just ask that tonight you might reassure us, Lord, that you do love us, that you do hear that knocking, Lord, that you know we're there, and you're concerned about the things that concern us, Lord. But I still thank you that you are a good God, and what makes you good, Lord, is that you don't give snakes, Lord, that you're not going to give us a snake. And so if what we're asking for is a snake, Lord, I'm so thankful that you're not going to give it to us, even if we don't understand it to be so, Lord. And so I just ask that you might work in this, Lord, that we might trust that the waiting you're giving us is a good thing. And we may not understand how it's good, Lord, but that we might press into that goodness, and we might try to figure it out. And maybe one day it'll make sense, Lord, and in doing so, our faith will be stronger, Lord, for the next time, in the next waiting period, Lord. And we might just continue to pursue you, so we might become stronger and stronger and stronger, Lord. And we thank you that you give us good gifts and good time. And so I just ask that be our prayer tonight. And so we just thank you and love you. Amen.